Since I'm a fan of both Mario and Kirby, I've made a decent amount of comparisons between the two franchises over the years. But one thing that I feel that Kirby handles a lot better is its cast of recurring characters, specifically with the villains. As we're seeing in Kirby Air Riders, there's a lot of returning villains in either the roster or other characters that appear in the game. Compare that to Mario Kart World, which is really only scratching the surface of what the Mario franchise has to offer. It seems like the Kirby franchise regularly brings back and even redeems some of its villains, while the Mario franchise usually either kills off or neglects every new villain it introduces, aside from Bowser and his subordinates. Kirby villains seem to be brought back in one of two ways: either recurring playable characters like Magolor or Marx, or bosses and spin-offs like Zero Two and Nightmare. Some characters have full-on redemption arcs, like Magolor in the Magolor Epilogue, and Daroch in Mass Attack. Yes, I meant Mass Attack, not Mouse Attack. Meanwhile, most Mario villains introduced, such as Reclusa, Dementio, King Ollie, and Tezma, the best fitness friends from the Bowser's Inside Story remake, and Cackletta, were canonically killed off in the first game that they appeared in. They really didn't have a chance to be fully fleshed out as characters. Now granted, characters like Reclusa and Dementio were handled pretty well, but I feel like they could have had a little more time to shine. There's characters like Fawful that do appear in two other games, but he was completely defeated without a chance of returning in Bowser's Inside Story. And then there's other villains that are technically still alive, like Wart, Tatanga, the X-Nauts, Midbus, and even redeemed villains like Count Bleck and Captain Syrup, but were just neglected and really haven't returned since their last appearance. The thing is with Kirby villains, though, is that most of them originate from mainline games, while most of Mario's non-Bowser villains are from the RPGs or spin-offs, putting them at a disadvantage. Unfortunately, Nintendo doesn't seem to have too much of an interest in representing these non-mainline characters, and villains in the mainline Mario games are really just slim pickings. Even if the Mario RPGs and other narratively driven spin-offs are more so meant to be self-contained adventures, I feel like they add quite a lot to the Mario universe and deserve to be represented in other games, especially since they're just as thematically distinct, if not more so, than the mainline Mario games, and I feel like they're even comparable to the mainline Kirby games in that sense. And I think all of this reveals another strength that the Kirby franchise has with its villains over the Mario franchise, and that's, it's not afraid to not have a main villain. Ever since the 90s and early 2000s, King Dedede wasn't considered the main villain anymore. He was kind of dethroned by multiple other villains, and kind of became a friendly rival slash ally to Kirby, and that's kind of how he is today. This allowed the Kirby franchise to have somewhat of a rogues gallery and a more morally nuanced cast of characters. I think this made the franchise really interesting, and it really opened up the franchise to have a lot of lore and allowed fans to kind of connect the dots on a lot of things between all of these villains, characters, ancient groups. It really made everything feel fleshed out. It made this universe feel really interesting. And with Mario, I'm not saying that Nintendo should retire Bowser. He should absolutely still be the main villain because of how iconic he is. But I think they should start creating new villains in the mainline titles that have some staying power, or at least consider using its wide cast of Mario spin-off characters in more games. I feel like making the franchise more connected would definitely make it a little more interesting. And I feel like the addition of more villains in some of these multiplayer-oriented spin-offs like Mario Party, or even the Mario sports games, could make them feel less iterative, less repetitive, and just more interesting in general. But with the Mario franchise, at the very least, things seem to be improving, at least on the Donkey Kong side. Since Donkey Kong Bonanza proved that you could have a new villain alongside a classic iconic villain, and King K. Rool is an example of a neglected villain coming back. On top of that, Void Kong is even alive and has a role in the DLC. I almost feel like this is the closest that the Mario and Donkey Kong franchise collectively have come to being comparable to the Kirby franchise with how it handles its villains. Now, all they need to do is add them in Mario Kart World, and hopefully Mario Tennis Fever, then the DK side of the franchise at least will be on par with Kirby. I just really hope that things continue to improve within the franchise, and I do hope they take some notes from Kirby Air Riders too. But anyways, let me know what you think down in the comments, and thank you guys for watching this video. Make sure to leave a like and subscribe for more, and make sure to check out my Discord server and Blue Sky if you want to. Stay perky!